Morning.
Good morning, my Empress Abner. How are you
feeling? Delightful.
Oh, delightful, she says. I like that.
Delightful.
Well, introduction. Oh dear. Yet here we are, another strong. Okay, it's Saturday, the 17th of September. I'm feeling good, my Empress. How are you feeling?
I've got gym today. So I'm feeling good.
Well, Jim is good. Jim is good, I'm sure. You must tell me how Jimmy goes later,
Uh, I'd rather be watching Raiders of the Lost Ark with Indiana Jones rather than going to the gym.
Don't say that. Okay. Now then, let's get this show underway. First of all, I just want to thank those who are with us this morning at 8 o'clock, that it's good to have your listening ear. It is good for you to be watching us today. Yeah. So I'm the motivator alongside Empress Abner Amina Apong. What a grand royal name.
So
Now, Amina Apong. Okay. How was your week? Or your strong? How was it?
It's been busy. It has been eventful. Obviously, due to many issues surrounding families. It's been busy. It's been great. I love what I do. Some people have obviously left the company that I'm working with, so that's a bit sad. But other than that, people are doing well. My people around me are prospering and they're developing and growing in their personal lives, their professional lives. So I can't complain in it. My son has, so my son's taking up bike riding, hockey. What else did he take up this week? Coding. So yeah, it's looking good.
Oh, well done. Well
He does
done.
coding, yeah. He's very good with computers, unlike his mother. But yeah.
No, you're actually quite good. You understate yourself. But it's okay. I've got to let that one ride for the moment. But it's good that the children are learning how to code as children. So it's natural because the 21st leading to 22nd century is their time. And of course, it will be dedicated to technology. Technology will change society. Technology has changed society. Yeah, so that's I'm warm to those words. Well done, you. Well done, you. Excellent.
Well, I prefer the old-fashioned typewriter and pencil and paper. So for anyone else, but I like a typewriter and a pencil and pad.
Well,
so yeah.
I have to say, I suspect your son and most people under the age of 30, I would imagine, I've not ever seen a typewriter.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can believe that.
Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting anyway. Nevertheless, let me just move on. So first of all, we should, of course, acknowledge the death of the monarch, and the monarch is now lying in state. Okay, we should acknowledge that. And I know that there are very long queues, which I'm by some estimates I'm told could extend for up to 10 miles, a quite remarkable figure. So it's I think we should simply acknowledge, and of course also acknowledge the ascension of King Charles III. Okay, I think that's just an important acknowledgement. But alongside that, I want to also acknowledge, and you understand this, my interest, that we should also acknowledge the tragic killing of our young son, Akaba. He was killed, curiously, as a result of a police chase, but which resulting in the police shooting him dead once the car was stopped. I've never heard of that happening here in this country. I know in the Wild West or the wilds of United States of America, such things happen, but I'm astonished that such things happened here in Britain. I want to acknowledge, and I also want to acknowledge all those members of the community, including myself, with written letters to officials with the intention that the officers concerned should be investigated. And I'm pleased now to learn that the officer, the shooter, is now been formally suspended. I think that's right. We need this investigated because it undermines confidence in the police. Does it not?
Yeah, of course.
Most certainly does.
I won't share my opinions on that because I think it won't be. I don't want to disrespect the police force or the young person who passed away and his family. So I think, at the end of the day, hopefully justice will be served. My condolences to Chris Carber's family because I know what it's like to have a young black son in the community that we live in now. So definitely my big condolences to the family. May you get the justice that you need and you want for your son. And obviously he was a father himself, so it's quite upsetting to hear that a young person has lost his dad in this situation. But yeah, definitely my sympathies and condolences to his family.
Well said, my Empress. Well said. It's a very disturbing case, an extremely disturbing case, and we need to get to the bottom of this as quickly as possible, because clearly what has happened is a travesty. An absolute travesty. So it's one of these incidents we must continue to monitor very closely, because it should not happen again. You never know, if others in high places might also express public concern. Mm-hmm. All righty. So let me, if I may, just move us along. Let's move us along. So I want to, and you understand, acknowledge the Professor Earl Taylor last week. What a wonderful, knowledgeable elder of our community he most certainly was. Yeah? Born in Jamaica, but living in Namibia, providing advice to the Namibian government, and I'm enthused about the opportunities that are available in Namibia. He most certainly came across as a university lecturer, that's for sure, but he was information rich, wasn't he? Was he not, that mindless? Was he not?
Yes, he was. It was like an encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know you like encyclopedias.
Yeah, when it's about Ghana, I do.
I completely understand you, don't worry. I do completely understand. And it is an interesting one that in the case of people such as Professor Earl, and there are many of them right across the continent of Africa, who are making truly positive contributions to Africa's evolution. Okay, and I want to encourage those who are listening, who have a skill, who have professional experiences, who have capital. Clearly, Africa is screaming out for your support. It's screaming out for your support. So let's hope that the messages that Professor Earl shared with us last week are shared by the listeners, are shared by our viewers. Okay, so well done, Professor Earl. Well done. And long may your works continue. Yeah? I think that's as much we could say to him. Is that not right, my Empress?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay. Now, let's just move it forward to, I know what is your favourite part of the show, my Empress. That is, of course, the most critical health messages. Would you? Oh, I love saying this to her, listeners.
Yeah. How's everyone's health? How's everyone feeling? I know that I'm not looking forward to the gym today because I haven't been back in years. So I'm very nervous. My friend's like, you better meet me at 11 o'clock in the morning. Yesterday she was saying, you better meet me at 11 o'clock. But yeah, I hope everyone's healthy as well. I've been eating a lot more fruit.
My Empress, that's the purpose of these shows, to motivate people, encourage people into taking care of their physical and indeed their mental health. Okay, because all too often we do not do enough of this. Okay, because quite reasonably, these are not instructions. These are simply encouragement to listeners and our and our viewers. You see, it's just like, if I may say so, this show. I say to people, well, what do I actually say to people you should do? Let me just play this. There you are. I simply ask, if you're viewing us on Facebook or YouTube, that you give us a like, that's the thumbs up, and you click the notification box so you know you want to be notified. And indeed, you can subscribe, so you formally receive notifications of each of our shows. There is no cost. It provides affirmation and provides for the YouTube and indeed the Facebook algorithms knowledge that you are interested in this program and you want to see future shows. Okay? It simply helps us to expand our listener and viewership. So please, if you're viewing us by Facebook or YouTube, don't forget to do what this says. Oh, I like that, huh?
Subscribe.
There you are. Thank you. So let me now go straight into those health messages. These are not instructions, so you always have a choice. Okay? You always have a choice. But we hope that you make wise choices. So I simply ask listeners, I simply ask viewers to consider the amount of sugar that you're ingesting into your body, you take into your bodies. Why? I want you to consider the implications of your actions. Okay. Now, I know that many of us have learned as children to eat sugar in unusual quantities. But Professor Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the Universities of West Indies, one of the top 1% universities in the world, has noted that in the Caribbean, and not dissimilar to here in Britain, part of Europe, and most certainly the United States of America, there's almost epidemic levels of diabetes in the African heritage, indeed Asian communities, because we consume far too much sugar and our body has become immune to sugar, that we don't process it sufficiently. And the consequence, of course, is that many of our community members suffer from diabetes. Diabetes is a prevalent disease which is in most of our families. I did a test and I found of 100 friends and those in my contact group, for example, 97 of them either have an immediate family member or someone in their extended family with diabetes, one or more members of their family. In Professor Hilary Beckles' family, he has 3 members of his immediate family who suffer from diabetes. So I simply ask you to consider, do you need to add sugar to your teas and coffees? Do you need to drink those really sweet drinks? All those cakes which we referred to last week, my Empress Abner. Okay? Do we really need to consume them in the quantities that we consume them? I'm not saying you cut it out completely. I simply ask you, please, to reduce it gradually over time. And in turn, take the pressure off your bodies. Okay? Because the levels of diabetes in the community is much too high, okay? And we could do something about it through our deliberate actions. I also ask members of the community to consider the amount of salt that we're consuming. Salt, again, is one of those insidious ingredients we add to our food, again, for flavors. It's learned behavior, okay? I ask people to consider, do you need to add that salt? I no longer buy salt from the grocery store, okay? And indeed, I can now taste the food. But Empress, have you ever tried not cooking without salt? Empress Abner,
Yes.
Have you ever considered cooking without salt, adding salt to your cuisine? Oh, I love the smile.
Oh God, I don't like answering questions. I don't like lying, and I don't like answering questions that make me uncomfortable.
You know
but
what? Go ahead. Yeah.
But I use Himalayan salt, like I said, because it adds back the natural nutrients and minerals into your body. So I use Himalayan salt. I know I shouldn't really use as much salt in my food, but I can't at the moment. I'm at a point where I can't live without salt, if that makes sense. Well, not live without it, but I like salt in my food. So, you know, I like my food well seasoned. I come from a culture where our food is not bland. So I don't know what to say.
You're right. We're the same culture. So if I may say so, you're right. And it's difficult. It's a difficult habit to change. That's all it is, a habit. Purely a habit, okay? It's learned behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
But the instances of hypertension or high blood pressure in the community is way above any average, way above it. And it's killing us in the long term, okay? And I've met far too many people with hypertension and the consequential conditions that derive from that, you know, higher levels of aneurysms, you know, is a direct result of heightened blood pressure. Aneurysms, you know, when you get a burst artery in the brain, you know. Now, it's really is an acute condition, okay? We don't realize it because, you know, we think that it's a flavor and we can't do that. And I hear you. But actually, when you meet someone who's got hypertension and you see them having to take medicines, you know, pills or other pharmaceuticals, or indeed they've got diabetes and they've got to test their bloods every day, or they've got hypertension, got to test their blood pressure every day, you know, do you want to have that type of life? I ask everyone who's listening to this. Do you want to have to test yourself in such a way because of what you've been doing to yourself?
Yeah.
And usually most people, my interest, say no. So I don't say to you, go cold turkey and you stop it now.
Yeah.
I say to you, gradual reduction. Just a gradual reduction. Just be conscious of the potential long-term consequences. Is that reasonable? Do you think?
Yes, no, it's definitely reasonable, but like I think salt. I think it's also what you eat outside, like fried food, chicken and chips. It seems to be a culture of where chicken and chip shops are outside our schools or near estates, and if you see how much oil is in chicken and chips, you will just like. I watched a video of them putting chicken and chips in this cauldron, and they pressed it down, and if you saw how much oil came out of the chicken, I could not believe that I used to have chicken and chips from the chicken shop, and this is how much oil they put in the chicken. I was like, and you know, sometimes when you eat and you think, oh my God, it's so greasy, it's so oily, and I just thought, this is why I could not eat. So it would be good for me. And even when my son says, Mom, I want chicken and chips, I was like, no, I'll get chicken because it will probably be much better than the ones you're getting from the shop.
And again, you've perfectly illustrated why we need to gradually change our cuisines, our habits. What you're recognizing. So the next area that I'll talk about is, of course, the amount of fat that we ingest. Okay, so you've just given a perfect illustration of how much fat is in our foods, the foods that particularly you buy from the fast food shop. So chicken and chips is a classic example of food that is which is fried in fat. Yeah. So of course that fat will end up into your bodies. And what happens often with many bodies, you bloat. Yeah. You get big chest, get big thighs. Yeah. Yeah. You get big bottoms. Yeah. Yes, exactly. I see you smiling. You see what I mean?
Because I like bottoms. That's why I'm laughing.
Okay, right. I'm not sure you should have announced that myself.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Nevertheless, don't be distracted, audience, to what you just said.
Yeah, but you know what it is? But also, some people, there are people from cultures like Samoans in the Pacific, they're naturally curvy people, so they have bottoms. There's people in the Caribbean and Africa that are naturally, it's not down to food. So we need to point that out as well. That is just actually the disposition of their bodies. Do you understand? And I'm just saying certain foods can have effects, especially on your bowels. And I'm speaking from someone who's part of the Colitis and Crohn's Disease Society UK, because both me and my sister have Crohn's and colitis. So my sister has now become vegan. I am very keto, or I'm very mindful of what I eat in my diet because it really affects my bowels. I've had to give up bread because it just does not agree with my bowels. And there's certain things that I've noticed that what other communities can eat, the Afro-Caribbean cannot drink or eat those things, like milk is not very good for certain Afro-Caribbean and African societies because it just doesn't agree with our system. So I know a lot of people are eating oat milk, almond milk. They've had to have alternatives because it just does not agree with their body, their digestive system. And I'm talking
So my empress. So you're making my point for me, and so well. And this is unscripted. So I must emphasize to listeners and viewers, this is unscripted. You see, and there you have it. So we understand the effects of oil or fats in our diet. You can see the impact it has on our physiology, our bodies, okay? And of course, because it's learned behavior, it's difficult for many to get out of that learned behavior. But for your own long-term health, how long you live a long, healthy life, we need to change those habits. Okay. And of course, I reminded people last week that dairy products are simply another form of fat. Cheese, it is hardened cow's fat. The butter is just soft, but still cow's fat. Milk is another form of cow's fat, bovine lactose. It's just fat. So I say to people, think carefully. I'm not saying you cut them out completely, but you gradually reduce the amount of the fats that you ingest, because in the long term, I say to people, those who are clearly overweight, okay, and we've got far too many members of our communities who are overweight, okay, notwithstanding those who are physiologically inclined to have slightly widened waist and bottoms, that's acknowledged. But for the most part, most human beings are not. And with the consequence, if you are overweight, you're carrying this undue weight. As you get older, the weight makes a difference. Okay, and you very rarely see people who are overweight living long, healthy lives for that reason. Okay, so we can do something about this. Fat is a biggie. It comes in so many different forms, and I say to the audience, please, I ask you to consider the amount of fat that you're ingesting. Equally, and Empress Abner has also alluded to this, the amount of carbohydrates, if I just finish with this, carbohydrates and starch that we consume, either in those root vegetables such as yams and potatoes, or in the rice and the quantum of rice that we're consuming. Okay, I ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fat and starch that we're consuming. My Empress, you could say.
I was going to say, because literally I've lost my train of thought, but I was going to say maybe we could have an event. And I know they do this a lot in East London in a market, just behind Spitalfields Market. They have loads of events of different foods from different countries, and they're vegan, different types of dietary requirements. So maybe in our community, maybe you could set up an awareness of different types of food or how to cook food that's more beneficial for the community. Maybe that's something you could set up.
I like that. Well, there's a thumbs up coming from me.
I'm just saying that's something you could do.
Or we could do it together, my Empress.
Saturdays are gym days for me. And I do Saturdays are gym days for me. Saturdays is time to get with more peoples and, get wavy. So, yeah.
I am pleased as a result of being on these shows that you're now going to the gym. You're now saying to me, Saturday is gym day. You know what? then this show has already made the impact, okay? Right? All we need now to look at the diets, okay? Look at the diet button. These shows, exactly. These shows are making the impact. I know for some are very stubborn, do not want to change because this is what they've learned, this is what they do. But when they understand the consequences, and I know that many of us will change. Because clearly, what we should be doing, of course, as you well know, my Empress, is, of course, eating more fruits and vegetables, okay? Particularly green fruits, green vegetables and fruits, a wide variety. That's what our body craves for. Okay? Our bodies crave for more green vegetables and fruits. That's what it really craves for. It craves for the appropriate amount of water. I'm told by experts up to 2 to 3 liters, depending upon your body mass. Speak to your doctor, speak to your nutritionist if in doubt. That is what our body craves. Yes, I have my water handy, my Empress. It's right here. It's right here. I know. It's right here.
You could do an ad for water.
Oh, why not? Yeah, why not? Because amazingly, far too members of the community do not drink enough water. They drink alcohol, they drink all these carbonated or fizzy drinks, but not enough plain water. Okay, I prefer warm water or hot water, to be honest with you. You know, because I find it very refreshing. Okay, and of course, it's most critical that you exercise.
Here we go.
I'm going to use 2 hands. I don't want you to complain. There you are.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying. Don't you think that if he keeps doing it on one hand, he's only going to work one hand and the other hand? That's what I said to him.
There you are. I know. You see, that's what I want. I demonstrate it because it's so important that people understand. I've got my weights here. Go for a run first thing in the morning or a brisk walk, 10, 15, 20 minutes, okay? It is so important for our general health and well-being that we think about our health, think about what we, our food and what we take into our bodies, and think about regular exercise. Drink the appropriate amount of water and try to think positive, or at least have a much wider outlook on life, so that you can transform yourself and to be the best versions of yourselves.
I like that.
How about that?
I like that. Yeah, I like that. You can also put fruit in your water as well. If you don't like plain water, put fruit in your water. Cucumber, lemon, mint, I don't know, strawberries, blueberries, whatever fruit you like. That can make the water taste better and you feel a bit more, it's like a bit of a juice.
You know what, you're actually right, and I actually do that myself occasionally. I usually just put a bit of either lemon or orange in the water, hold in, or I just take it out. I find that it gradually dissolves in the water whilst I'm drinking. It gives the water a nice flavour.
Yeah.
There's no sugar in it, there's no salt in the water, there's no other additives. Just a little bit of fruits makes all the difference. It's no longer just simply plain water. Okay, that's a really good way, particularly encouraging children sometimes just to drink plain water, but adding a small amount of fruit to it, and that makes all the difference. I recall when I was a child, and my mother, to encourage us to drink more water, she did exactly that. It was a bit of apple she used to put in it. And we used to think, oh, mummy, look, there's apples in there. And we shake it around and we drink the water in the right quantity. It made all the difference. Okay. So I hope these messages are beginning to resonate with the audience, and it's understood why these messages are necessary. Yeah. There is no reason for us to have these abnormally high levels of these lifestyle diseases in our community if we take care of ourselves. It is mission critical. We can and we must take care of ourselves for our children's and our children's sake. Let's get this in. Let these habits be good habits that enhances our bodily function, so we can function well. Because if you take care of your body, you take care of your mind. There you go. How
And
about
also
that?
to parents as well, when you're going past the shops with your kids, let's get less crisp, less sweets. Even though I'm bad for saying this with my son sometimes, but sometimes it's about, also, and saving yourself money, having the snacks ready at home. You carry them with you. You give your kids fruit. I saw a mum on Friday at the Friends of Keyworth meeting, and she had fruit and sandwiches packed in her bag to give to her child to save her money, so she don't have to go to the shop and buy snacks and food, and you get tempted. So maybe having snacks as well as you're going to pick up your children, drop your children to school, having that in the bag as well. I know that's extra weight to carry, but saves you money as well.
You're 100% correct, 100% correct. And this is parents thinking ahead, knowing that your child might require a snack. Prepare your own snack, healthy snack to give to your child. Okay, and that's the way in which the child develops healthy habits. Okay, because you've always paid attention to what they eat and what habits they form as children, they take into their teenage and adulthood. Okay, and those are good habits for a child to develop into adulthood. So long may those habits be positive. Okay, and long may parents think forward, think about the impact of their actions in relation to their child's the physiological and mental development. That's the way forward. So well done, my Empress. Well done. Well done. It's good talking to you because you speak so naturally, and you don't lie. I just love it when you said, "Oh, I don't like lying." Oh, I can only say bless you. That's what I'm going to say.
I can't lie about the way I live my life or what I eat because I love food. So I'm a foodie. So I couldn't lie about that. I'm not the best, and I've got health issues, but I just do what I have to do to get through it. And I hope my friend Feroza's not listening, because if she hears this, she'll come on the show and tell you about what I do. So I hope she's not listening, because she will just I think.
Well, you see, at this point, I'm always interested in people who doubt what we just said. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the number up, okay? And if there's anyone who's listening who doubts what we've just described in terms of the health messages, okay, and the implication for us, okay, if there's anyone who's listening and wants to question us on these health messages, okay, or wants to add to them, I'm inviting you. We've got maybe 5 or 10 minutes before our guest arrives. I'm inviting you to call in on 0208 133 5616. I say again, if you're in the UK, it's to call the studio just to affirm our health messages, or we wish to add to it, or you wish to dispute. Fine, please call in now. 0208 133 5616. I'm always interested to hear from listeners who wish to question the veracity of the health messages we have given out, because I do find it curious that some people have questioned the veracity of these health messages. It seems on the surface to be common sense, but some people wish to contend it, and I have been challenged on a number of occasions in the past. On other occasions, of course, you've had some listeners who've called in who have affirmed that these messages have made a difference to their lives, they've changed their lifestyle as a result.
Yeah.
And indeed, Empress Abner is now said for the very first time here live on the Motivator Show alongside Empress Abner, Amina Apong. Now, Saturdays are gym days. It's fantastic. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah. Then we know we're on the right track, We're making an impression. Because, gosh, if we don't take care of each other, who will take care of us, my Empress? Who will take care of us?
I can name a few people. Take their names on thingy. I have a few people that can take care of me, but I'm not going to say their names.
Oh,
On a live show, sorry.
Fair enough. You know, this is such an important subject, but we'll keep repeating these messages because until these levels of diabetes, hypertension, until the level, until we increase the numbers of our community members who are exercising, okay, either go to gyms or walking briskly or running, until we see significant changes in those numbers, it is mission critical that we give out these advice to the community. But if in doubt, speak to a professional.
100%.
Yeah? Don't take my word for it. Speak to your doctor, speak to a nutritionist, speak to a personal trainer or someone involved in physical education. Okay? Speak to them, okay? Because they're best placed to give you the authoritative advice. Ours is but guidance. It's a suggestion that you consider. Okay? All righty. Okay. So let's move it on to my Empress, to the theme of today's show. Now, today's show, my Empress, as I explained to you previously, is an interesting one because, believe it or not, I have not had someone on the show who is a entertainer and also historian and educator. Mm-hmm. I had someone like that previously. I can't explain why, but the guest who will arrive soon, I heard this person, okay, recite a poem.
Yeah.
The poem was recited with such spiritual enlightenment, with such charismatic passion, that I was moved, truly moved. And I'm not a person easily moved. Our guest, when he arrived, was a powerful orator, an example of the multitude of talent we have in our community.
Yeah.
And it's someone who can not only educate, write books, write poems, direct and write plays. Okay, he's someone who's a singer, an orator, a baritone opera singer. Wow, exactly. Yeah, multi-talented, and we have so many in the community. So this is a good example of a truly multi-talented person of African heritage.
We like people who've got dimensions. We like people who've got dimension and edge.
Rather. But I have to say, Empress Abner, so have you. And over time, I'm demonstrated to you. Okay? I will demonstrate it to you. So are you. Okay? I know that you don't have to, someone doesn't say that to you very often. I realize that. Don't worry. I will demonstrate it over time. Okay, you watch. Mark my words. But our guest, when our guest arrives, okay, is someone with an intelligence. Okay, and I say intelligence, I don't mean purely academic intelligence, an emotional intelligence. Okay, which is the type of personality. Okay, he is of Nigerian descent. Okay, we need to see more of manifesting in the leadership in Nigeria. Okay, I believe great Nigeria has an abundance of such talent, okay, which are unrecognized in that country. Okay, just like Ghana. Don't misunderstand me. Okay,
No, it's fine.
An abundance of naturally talented people. Okay, but they don't realize it. They don't realize how talented they are, okay? Because of the conditions in the country, okay? Okay? And some of the leadership, members of the leadership, okay? Okay? The vast talent pool that is in Nigeria, okay, goes generally unrecognized, okay? Just like Ghana, because, oh my God, Ghana is abundant with talent. But Nigeria, because of the sheer size of the country, okay, there will be as many people in Nigeria in 20, 30, 40 years' time as there are in the European Union. Can you imagine? As many people in Nigeria as there are in the entire European Union.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the incredible talent that's there is just simply being under-invested in. That's the only problem with the country. It's not religion, believe it or not. Okay? It is not religion. Because whilst religion plays a part, it is not religion.
Thank God.
It's not actually the politics. I think the problem with Nigeria is that traditional leaders do not talk to each other. Yeah, we had here a few weeks ago, as you know, Queen Nas the first from Ghana, a Guk Queen. Okay, she's a testament of those visionary leaders that need to exist amongst the traditional leaders in any one of our countries across the continent of Africa. It is traditional leaders that hold the spirit, the mind, the soul of their peoples in their proclamations, as it were. Okay, it is traditional leaders or the cultural centers, yeah? The custodians of culture, traditions, and histories. Okay. I want to encourage the traditional leaders to show genuine leadership, which is not doesn't solely concern with the immediate community for which they are a recognized leader, but alongside the leaders of leaders. Mm-hmm. That's a problem with most of our countries across the motherland. Okay, the traditional leaders are not come together and speaking peace and come together in common aim and common purpose. Okay, but once they galvanize a future that would include all the communities, all the leaders in that country, that at that point, Nigeria would have turned the corner towards peace and prosperity. But ultimately, the traditional leaders hold the future of their peoples in their hand. You know, in Galaxy Radio, for example, we have Nana Pakambabai. You know, he himself has gone through the traditional means to achieve his position of Nana, chief, if you like. Okay, and was chosen by elders, spiritual ones, for his role in the community. Okay, this, of course, in this case, is Sierra Leone. Okay, it is quite clear that the weight of such people, the power of such people, their words have such weight, such power, that they can transform the attitudes, yeah, and the relationships of the various African communities. Okay, very much a Pan-Africanist viewpoint. Okay, that's the only way forward. It is the only way forward. So it's not, I repeat, it's not the politicians. Okay, it is not the religious leaders. It is the traditional leaders who have existed for tens of thousands of years. Yeah, it is traditional leaders who hold Africa's future in their hands. I wish to encourage them to speak unity, common aim, common purpose. Okay, and I'm in no doubt what I've asserted is a result of empirical observation across all of our African communities, it is quite clear at the very center of those communities is, of course, the traditional leaders. I repeat, it is not the religious leaders. Whilst the religious leaders most certainly have a significant role to play, it is the traditional leaders who have been there right from the beginning. Okay. They're the ones who hold Africa's future in their hands. They can be truly transformative. And alongside, of course, the religious leaders, alongside, of course, the political leaders, and indeed those who are the economic leaders, the captains of industries. Okay. But it needs, the start needs to arrive. It all needs to come from somewhere. All righty. So let's go to our guest. I'm going to bring our guest into the studio.
Yay!
Well, let's get the show on the road.
Yeah.
There we go.
I was going to say I used to do poetry in school, and I love poetry, so I'm glad he's on.
Okay, all right. Let's see if our technology is working. Can you hear us all right? First of all,
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
we can hear you very well. I just want to have you continue to talk. How are you?
Is the level fine? Because I can adjust it at this end.
Excellent. Just turn up a little bit. That will do.
Turn it up a little bit. Yes, I'm turning it up on my monitor.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, I'm going to, for the audience, I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to ask you, because you've got a wonderful baritone voice. Yeah? The voice of our ancestors. Okay? I'm going to ask you, please, just to introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you?
My name is Tayo Aluko. I am Nigerian. I live in Liverpool, and I am a writer, actor, singer, and more recently, I've become something of a poet.
More recently, I believe you've always been a poet, because it was my first encounter, and hearing your voice, you may have heard my recounting this experience. It's one of the most moving experience I have had. I don't mind sharing with you, Tayo.
Well, thank you.
Okay. And I want to, if I may, introduce you to my co-host, Empress Abner Amina Apong. Empress. Okay.
Hi, Tayo. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I might make a trip to Liverpool soon for you to see you.
Okay, you've been most welcome.
I don't mind saying to you, Tayo, when you saw your picture, I noticed the high birds. You know, the high birds went up like this.
No, because he's a poet. He's a poet. You know, poets are creative people. We need more poets from our community. There's not enough. So I was excited.
Yes. Paul Robson said artists are the gatekeepers of society.
Yeah.
I would argue more so than the traditional chiefs and the politicians, but let's not have that argument now.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm going to like Tayo. He's on fire. I'm going to like him.
And we may, at some point, that comment, we might intersect that comment at some point in the show, but it's an interesting one, because you and I are not too distant in age. Okay.
Yeah.
We've gone through life experience, you know. Okay? There's a certain amount of travel, interaction with our communities from across the world. You know?
Yes.
Again, whilst I know for certain we have a common aim and common purpose, we will most certainly need to debate how for our communities, both here, but most certainly across the motherland of Africa, how we're going to improve our current conditions. Okay? What are the strategies to employ? Who are the key personalities that are able to enable the young to take those important steps forward to economic viability? Interesting. I'm going to come back to this subject, but I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to, if I may, I'm going to begin the interview. Now, as you know, our questions are going to highlight your life journey from Nigeria to Britain. Okay?
Yes.
Now, you were previously, I understand, an architect. Okay.
Yes.
And now you are a professional. And interesting how you describe yourself. You're a playwright, actor, singer, outstanding poet, if I may say so. So, what age were you when you came to Britain? Okay.
I was 16,
Mhm.
and I came from a school in Lagos to a boarding school in Blandford Forum in Dorset. One of these exclusive, expensive schools, which my brother had a scholarship 3 years before me and thrived. And so my parents put the money together to send me to this school. And after that, I studied architecture, first of all at Bath, then Canterbury and London, and finally did my final degree here in Liverpool. Qualified, started to work as an architect for a year before I set up on my own. Went into partnership with another guy who sadly died 18 months later. And I carried on my own, tried to become a developer. But the kind of stuff I was interested in, the city seemed to resist. And my fortunes went down dramatically. But all through that, I had carried on my passions for singing and acting. And I had I had come across a story of Paul Robeson, and over a long time had written a play about him and started performing it. And went in 2008, December 2008, I performed it in Lagos in Nigeria. And my father, who was then 90 years old, saw the play.
Oh, right.
And the following morning, we were sitting together on the veranda in the house in Lagos, and he said to me, "If you want to do this full time, you have my blessing." So I think finally, at the age of 44 or something, he finally understood me. And so that was very nice. And then as it happened, the following 2 or 3 months later, I was supposed to be paying my annual subscriptions to the Royal Institute of British Architects and paying my indemnity insurance. I didn't have the money, and I decided, you know what, I'll just give it up now and carry on with my play, which by then had started to show promise. And I haven't looked back since. So I've been performing Call Mr. Robson for 15 years. And I have a newer play, Just an Ordinary Lawyer, which I've been performing for 6 years.
I'll ask you to slow down just for a moment, because you've navigated all the way from your school, you jump forward.
Right.
If I may, just go to being your course in architecture and your why that profession? What was it? Why did you go into that profession and not straight into playwright and artistic forms?
Well, in Lagos, my secondary school, King's College, Lagos, I, did a whole range of subjects. And at the age of 13, 14, 15, whatever, you started thinking what you wanted to do for a profession. Being an artist, a performing artist, was never in question. There was just not seen to be a feature in that. And in fact, later on in life, when I was doing more of it and enjoying it even more, I was convinced that I would never do it as a profession, because I loved it so much that if I had to make a living out of it, I would lose the love for it. So going back to the decision to become an architect, what was on offer was, for a typical Nigerian middle-class family, engineer, which my father and brother were, doctor, which my brother and sister were, lawyer, which a brother was, but I wasn't that interested in any of them. And one day I looked at a building in Lagos, I think it was the Secretariat, and I said to myself, "Ooh, I wouldn't mind having been responsible for that design." And that was when I made the decision to become an architect, which meant I had to take up art again, which I had given up and I took it up when I came to school in Dorset, and that's how it all started.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Empress Abner. You've got a.
I went through a number of architecture schools: Bath, Canterbury, University College London, and Liverpool. And of all those, the one course that meant the most to me and changed my life to a large extent was design for developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I finally saw what studying was all about, because on that course, I learned for the first time, to my shame, a lot about African history, the reasons for underdevelopment, and that African history being British and European history of colonialism and so on. And in the course of architecture, learning for the first time the concepts of building with appropriate materials, housing for the masses, and so on. And that, I would say, was the beginning of my political awakening. And by pure chance, I ended up in Liverpool, where I eventually came into contact with the city's slave trading history and the links to Africa and so on. So it seemed that the route of my life was leading me on a very meaningful journey without me realizing it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's a really interesting insight into your journey. Empress Abner, you've got a question.
Yes, I have. And I've been to Liverpool, by the way, Teo, and I've taken my son there because I know a lot of history about slavery with the boats and things like that. So I took my son when he was like 5, and he really, really enjoyed it. So
good.
And they've got a museum as well there. So
that's
it's
right.
a really good place to go to learn about your history. You have international accolades for being an actor, playwright, a baritone opera singer, and poet. Which of the talents do you feel you most excel in, and why?
I don't think I can pick one out.
Okay.
I would say maybe the singing comes easiest because I've been doing it the longest, since I was about 5. Playwriting, I started 2007. And I've written 3 plays, and I'm working on a 4th at present. And that's not easy, but the end result, judging by audience reactions, is worth the pain and the struggle. Acting, I learned on the job when I was doing Call Mr. Robson, more or less. And yes, I love that. And in fact, what COVID has done since it shut down theaters was force me to make myself available for TV, film, commercials, that sort of thing. And I hope I've done 1 or 2 of those, and I hope to do more.
Can I just ask you, Taylor, what made you want to get into creative art? You know, what was the passion? Because, you know, some people started from young, they go dance classes, they go to the Brit school, but you kind of got into it at a later stage in life. Like, what made it become something that you tried to turn it? Because, you know, most people do it from, like I said, a young age, but you've kind of dabbed here, tabbed there, taken from here, and then you've kind of now made it your passion.
Yes, well, it was always there since I was 5, and my mother instructed me to go into the primary school choir in Lagos. There was no choice about that.
Okay.
And it has never left me. But as I said, I was quite convinced I wouldn't want to do it professionally. But the story of Paul Robson was gifted to me, and I was determined that story needed to be told. And not having seen myself as a storyteller up to that point, I went looking for playwrights to write this story. And it took 10 years before I decided to have a go myself. And I ended up writing it myself. And even when writing it myself, I wasn't convinced that I was the person going to be telling the story on stage. And in fact, I remember having a reading of the play when there were 6 or 7 characters in it. And my then temporary director enlisted the services of a person to play Paul Robeson, that person being the late Felix Dexter.
Oh, right.
Yes, so he performed my play with a group of actors, but it turned out that Felix wasn't as good a singer as the director thought. So I was singing alongside him, acting,
Right.
and then we had to take a train back to London from Birmingham because we started very late. So I stepped into the role, and so basically, the idea that this story needed to be told was the first thing that came to me, but I have ended up doing it as a one-man play and taking it around the world. So it was just circumstances, plus the fact that my profession, my attempt at being a developer of green buildings for social use in Liverpool, it seems I was sort of, my face didn't fit in Liverpool for that kind of thing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to do something that I thought was important and would make a difference in a different way. So that's how I ended up doing this.
Thank you. Again, your reciting experience of our peoples here in Britain. It's interesting you say here you are a talented architect and you felt that you could not progress in that profession because of the people you had to interact with. It's again another one of these experiences, and I want others to hear this, because often it is said that we might be complaining without due reason. What your experience is a experience I hear repeatedly. But if I may, just go on. I said at the beginning you have this wonderful deep baritone voice, and you played in operas. Okay, I've got a list of various operas here, numerous operas recitals that you have been involved in. And I can't list them all, and I won't, he says. But which of your opera appearances do you feel has really stretched your vocal talents to their limits? I'm interested, but I want to go watch it, you see.
Well, the operas I was in were when I was in amateur operatic societies in London and Liverpool. It so happens that in both London and Liverpool, in London and in Preston, where I used to travel from Liverpool to be in join a society, I did the Verdi opera Nabucco, which is probably most famous for the chorus of the Hebrew slaves. And in London, I was in the chorus. But in Preston, I actually got the lead part of Nabucco, which is written for a baritone.
Mm-hmm.
And undoubtedly, that's the one that stretched me the most. It's a demanding role. Playing a lead in an opera is an incredible honor. And yes, I think that's one that I look back on. I may even have a video of it somewhere, but I'd forgotten that I'd done that. Yeah.
I will press you for that one, but I would love to hear it. But a friend of mine apparently has watched you perform Elijah and the Messiah.
All right.
Yes, interesting.
Okay. So those are oratorios.
Yes. Oh, please educate us. Yes.
And oratorio is a work for orchestra, chorus, and solo and singer soloists.
Mm-hmm.
So Elijah, again, I played Elijah, also written for baritone with chorus. And what was the other one?
And the Messiah, or the other one?
Yeah, Messiah. Yeah. That's a kind of bass solo. So I have done those several years in the past, and oratorio is a beautiful art form, which unfortunately I haven't been able to do for several years. I'd love to do that again.
I would possibly, you most certainly made an impression, that's for sure. But
that's good.
that you're coming on today, she was overwhelmed. So I know she's listening. She may well call in later. Okay, so it would be interesting. Anyway, I'm going to go over to Empress Abner. You have a question, Empress Abner.
You had and wrote. Oh yeah, hi. You've researched and wrote and narrated to camera a film, The History of West Africa Before the Transatlantic Slave Trade, which forms part of the permanent exhibition National Museum in Liverpool's International Slavery Museum. What is the significance of this work to you?
Yes, the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool reopened in 2007. And this particular part of the exhibition, there was a guy called Zachary Kingdon who worked with me, and the idea was to give a little bit of African history prior to the slave trade, basically so that people are reminded that Africa had a history before the tragedy of European enslavement. And so he gave me a number of books and so on, and I wrote this text. And to get all that history into a piece of film which lasts 3 minutes is such a difficult task, but we did it, and it's there, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of. Just things, like the fact that iron was first smelted in Africa, that the art that Europeans have learned from and used, the art of the lost wax sculpture, for instance, that sort of thing, being able to find that and then make a little narrative of it, and with pictures behind me, it was great, and that's something that I'm very proud of.
Forgive me for interrupting you.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to say what you just said again about iron, because there are young people who will listen to this, and what you just said will be news to them, astonishing to them. Say it again, because they need to hear it.
Yes. Now, I am not as good a historian at recalling facts that one learned, but I just remember that iron was first smelted in Africa maybe 5,000 years ago. I don't know. But the history of having technology or discovering technology in Africa is in many cases older than European technology. So the Europeans learned a lot of stuff from us, stole a lot of stuff from us. And we have been persuaded by decades or even centuries of miseducation that we are backward, when in fact, in many cases, we were forward of the Europeans.
It is interesting. Another reason why I do these programs, I call it the de-brainwashing programs, of course,
Mm-hmm.
But it is, in the universities, this knowledge is known.
Yeah.
Okay? But you wouldn't glean this knowledge if you look at our national curriculum.
That's right.
And it is a profound observation to make, that the national curriculum is full of imperialist jingoism. Okay?
Yes.
And the result, of course, is that the experience you had in Liverpool being an architect, people here have got this such a false view of the world of themselves. Okay? That is then therefore difficult to form positive relations with Africans even.
Yes.
People wonder that they can't form positive relations with Africans, because they've been taught as children that they were the first smelters. They were the founders of mathematics and literature, astrology.
And they discovered Africa, and the great monuments that they discovered in Africa couldn't possibly have been built by Africans. They must have been built by some invading Martians or something.
Martians, yes.
Yes.
Or Venetians, some Jupiter, maybe.
That's right, yeah.
But it is profound, and to hear you say it in such a calm and considered way, without the emotion, because clearly the misinformation that pervades British society, and affects the consciousness of so many British people that I encounter is really quite, as I said earlier, profound to hear it said by yourself. But it is nevertheless, there is a rising consciousness, I believe, here in Britain. In order for Britain to survive in the international world, now it's not a part of the European Union, it has to come to terms with its past so they can build a better future.
No more so than now, the death of the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting thing, actually, I realized this week that my play, Just an Ordinary Lawyer, contains a big mistake that I have been performing. So briefly, the play uses the life of a man who became Britain's first black judge, who happened to be Nigerian, who happened to sing, who happened to love cricket. And in the play, I wanted to give a piece of information, an example of British colonialism at its worst. And so I invented a case that my character was involved in. And he says, one of my first cases dates back to 1954. My client was accused of involvement in a robbery in the West End, but he had a cast iron alibi because on the night in question, he was actually in Nairobi, not London. He had gone on His Majesty's Secret Service under an assumed identity with diplomatic baggage containing cash, British pounds, with which to bribe people to testify against Jomo Kenyatta. I realized this week that what I had said he had gone on His Majesty's Secret Service was actually Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay.
Because it was 1954, and we were reminded that she'd been there since 1952.
Yes.
So under her watch, the repression of the Land and Freedom Army of Kenya, called the Mau Mau, happened. And people have been saying in the last week or so, she never once apologized for that or even acknowledged that it happened. So this is the kind of thing that artists, researchers, and so on can bring to the fore in a way that sometimes contains a morsel of misinformation or inaccuracy, but the play does that job of reminding people of the history of British colonialism.
It is absolutely correct. I have noted the partisans' comments or lack of comment at times, but I don't wish to speak ill of the dead. Okay?
Sure.
Yep, I don't wish to speak ill of the dead. But it is hoped that the new king, King Charles III, will be an enlightened king.
Let's hope so.
Thank you. I won't take that any further. I'm going to hand back over to Empress Abner.
Another one of your masterpieces, written and played by you, includes the award-winning Call Mr. Robeson, has been performed as far as north within the Arctic Circle and as south as New Zealand, with performances at New York Carnegie Hall in February 2012. Why is it essential for us to remember Paul Robeson? And I just researched him now, by the way.
Good. I'm glad you've done that. I first encountered him because I was singing somewhere and somebody said, "You remind me of Paul Robeson," and I hadn't heard of him. And then I stumbled on his biography. And I think the importance, so he was African-American, born in 1898, died in 1976. And in his time, he was probably the most famous American of any color in the world.
Yes.
famous for being an actor and a singer. His most famous role was Joe in Showboat, from which the song Old Man River comes. But in addition to being a very famous actor and singer who had been a national football player as a college student, he became extremely political, and I would say was the forerunner of the modern civil rights movement. So he was saying and doing the things that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X would end up saying and doing 30 years before them. But so if you imagine somebody as famous as Michael Jackson, for instance, going around the world speaking truth to power in the way that Steve Biko used to, for instance, that's very dangerous, very, very dangerous. And so there was a concerted effort to write him out of history even before he had died. And that succeeded, which is why somebody like you, Empress Abina, didn't know about him. And somebody like me, even at the age of 33, 27 years ago, didn't know about him. So stories like that, I'm convinced have a lot to teach us, have a lot to inspire us, because Paul Robeson, because of his socialist beliefs and communist sympathies, was determined to keep reminding people, especially through the concept of trade unionism, that working collectively as ordinary people, regardless of your race, your color, or whatever, you have to come together to fight the system. And when you come together, you are powerful and dangerous. And that, I think, we are beginning to see even today here in the UK with the reemergence of trade union activity, which the press and the ruling parties, plural, including your party, the Labour Party, are trying to minimize, to sort of distract people from showing how effective collective action is in achieving societal change. So stories like that of Paul Robeson are very inspiring, and his pride, even as an African American son of somebody who was born into slavery, his pride in the continent of Africa is another thing that really impressed me and educated me, and I just try to share that education with people.
Very interesting.
Go ahead.
You know, I think he would be someone to talk about in the Black History Month scheme that schools have, because, you know, obviously we have had Black History Month. They only do it for a month, but like I was saying to one of my colleagues yesterday, Black history, because our schools have got predominantly Black children, should be embedded in the curriculum at least once a week, because we're not reflecting on the children that we're dealing with, like Iraqis, Syrians, you know, whoever's coming into the country. The curriculum doesn't reflect who they are, so they don't know, they have an identity, because it's not reflected in the books, it's not reflected in what they've taught. But I was so glad to know one of the schools that I worked in, they talked about the Empire of Benin for the whole term. Like, the kids learned so much about Benin, and it was great. I thought the school is actually making an effort to educate our children about history. That's so important, and that's so rich.
Yes. And the fact that school is doing that would be down to the one or two individual teachers who have decided to go against the grain, possibly at personal cost. You never know, but it's being done, and that's great.
And I would just say at that point, and particularly schools, which I'm very familiar with a latter-day school governor, two schools, chair of schools, and have been involved in recruiting many teachers. That whilst you're right that there is some personal cost, honestly, all schools are obliged to adapt the curriculum so it reflects the communities that they serve. Effective teaching and learning only occurs where there is a relationship between the teacher and the learner. And that is only successful where there's an appreciation of the learner's cultural perspective, their heritages, and you use it as a basis to engage the imagination and to engage the intellect. And increasingly, I'm come across teachers, practitioners, both from our community and wider communities who understand the fundamentals of how to gain the best out of their students, particularly here in London, which is such a diverse capital, the economic engine for Britain. You cannot be monoculture, monolithic in your attitude. You have to reflect that diversity and use it as an advantage. It most certainly is not an impediment. And so I see these changes occurring, and it's no longer, I say to you, at personal cost. It's a self-interest. The school's very survival often depends on the school being popular amongst parents. Otherwise, parents will simply not send their sons or daughters to the school or move them to a school which is perceived to be more successful. Okay?
Yeah.
You see, parent power is truly powerful, and we are a significant community here in London. In some London boroughs, we're nearly half or the majority of the population. So that gives a significant influence over public services and how those public services are delivered and serves our needs. So
if you think of a school in a suburb of Liverpool, on the other hand, for instance, or Manchester, it is likely that the Black students are a minority. And the teachers will almost certainly be 98% white, probably. And so their interest in teaching Black history will be minimal. So, I mean, maybe at this point I can suggest that I read one of my poems.
Oh,
Yes,
please.
that would be great. Yes.
Notice we both reacted to that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the point is, through a poem like this one that I'm going to recite, I hope to bring history into any kind of school in a way that teaches, that sort of highlights imperial history, but also history of service of our people and struggle. So during lockdown, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was struck by the reactions of both Boris Johnson and the Orange Man, who was then in the White House, saying that this is not a problem. We're going to get through this just because we're great, basically. And a line came to my head: the empire has no clothes. It just came into my head, and I said, I'm going to write something that includes that. And it ended up being the last line of a poem which I call Greatness in a Time of COVID. We made our homes in the belly of the beast that devoured our ancestors and spat them out on the other side of the globe, that stole our gold and rubber, our skills and knowledge, our art and music, our history. It gorged and fattened itself, dressed in unmissable finery, and declared itself proudly the empire. It saw its greatness in our puzzled eyes as we stared up the barrel of a gun from every corner of the earth. Its guns were needed still, we were told, to protect us from the socialists and the communists. Capitalism, our enslaver for centuries, would liberate us one day. It bought our rulers and continued the quiet theft of our humanity and our dignity as it planted poison and bombs where once there was rice and diamonds. And then the virus came, silent, swift, and deadly. We answered the call to the front line to confront this invisible enemy. We asked simply for gloves, masks, visors, and gowns. As we fell one by one, we finally began to see that what the gentle ones had been whispering loudly had been true all along. We'd been feeding on the beast's excrement, unmindful of the fact that the empire has no clothes.
Wow.
So, thank you.
Wow. You can see, audience, you can see and hear why I was so moved. Eloquent.
Thank you.
Eloquent.
So that's history. That's yeah, in a piece of art.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And younger ones who are listening to it. In fact, there is no age limit here. We can all become poets of various kinds. But this poet, oh my dear, truly moving, truly moving. I'm more control. I'm actually controlled this time, Teo. The last time your delivery, I was so moved. I thought, wow, that was outstanding. And of course, your last poem was centered on, of course, Nigeria. I think you were describing Nigeria in some way.
The one that you heard recently was actually Patrice Lumumba in Congo.
Yeah.
That's the one you heard a few weeks ago.
Would you mind?
Okay. Yes, it's called Lumumba's Tooth, and as people would have heard, seen in the news recently, that Patrice Lumumba's the only remains that ever, only part of him that remained physically was a tooth, which had been stolen, and finally was returned to his home country from Belgium a few months ago. And I dedicated this poem to an African-American prisoner who I have become friendly with, who is on death row for a crime he didn't commit. So Lumumba's Tooth for Keith Lamar. I don't recall his name, but I read about him, how he was present as the man, the keeper of a people's dreams, was murdered, dismembered, butchered, and dissolved in acid to remove all trace of his existence. What part was his in all this? Only following orders, perhaps. Yet, at some point, he made a decision all on his own, as he glimpsed the gold glittering through the blood as it sank into the hungry liquid still firmly attached to the strong jawbone. That gold, which, like all other gifts, disproportionately endowed the continent, he, like his rapacious ancestors and descendants, decided it must be his to keep. That single gold tooth would be the spoils of yet another dastardly act of brutality. Inevitable almost that this small relic would end up in the pocket of one of that murderous lot. The shining prize must have haunted him for decades. And when finally he decided to confess, to acknowledge, and to surrender it, was his conscience salved? Did he think he'd be thanked? That his name would go down in history? Again, it escapes me, that name. Let's call him Belgium or Britain, France or Germany, the Netherlands or Poland. Last name, definitely Europe. That interrupter of a people's dreams, the temporary custodian of the small gold tooth, that would eventually find its way back to the continent, the country, the family of the man whose name wouldn't disappear, Patrice Emery Lumumba.
That's so good. You know, as you was reading his poetry, I was remembering how we went to Liverpool and we saw something about Patrice Lumumba, and he said this in one of the pictures that was there: Africa will write its own history, and it will be to the north and to the south of the Sahara a history of glory and dignity. And I always remember that, and I took a picture for me and my son because it was under a poster of a chief from Ghana. And I thought that's so inspiring. I said, you know, when I go to my schools and we do Black History Month, I will always mention him.
Great.
So, yeah, that's what I was
and he's another example of somebody who was considered so dangerous to European interests that they had to kill him. Not just kill him, try to butcher him, dissolve his body in acid so that you would forget about him. And here we are talking about him just because of one gold tooth.
Wow. Oh, I feel those.
I've got goosebumps.
Yes, I feel what said. Oh, they're me. As I said before, I have no idea why you're not there. Oh, they're me. Anyway, thank you. That was extremely moving. I will control myself. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Absolutely beautiful. And if I may, the other play of yours, Just an Ordinary Lawyer. Okay. Tell us a little bit about that one. That was another one that became a talking point amongst my networks. Tell us about that particular experience of yours. It's fascinating.
Yes, I have a friend here in Liverpool called Femi Showande, also Nigerian, some years older than me. And because he knew I was a singer, he used to talk about this uncle of his that sang. And then the uncle died. And eventually I actually inherited his uncle's sheet music of songs. Now, I was performing Call Mr. Robson in London once, and the Nigerian guy in the audience said to me afterwards, "Have you heard of Tunji Showande?" And I said, "Actually, I have. His nephew is my friend in Liverpool." He said, "Go onto the website, onto web. Anything you see there, I wrote. I think you might be interested in writing a play about him." And I went, and yes, I found that he was born in 1912. He came to England in 1945, became a barrister, became a head of chambers, and became a part-time judge, which is all great. But when you compare life like that to that of the person who had been performing for years, Paul Robson, not really that interesting. But Liverpool, Everyman and Playhouse wanted me to submit a series of ideas for plays, and I mentioned this guy in one of them, and they said, "Oh, this looks interesting. You know, let's write something about this." And that was the one I had hoped they wouldn't pick because I didn't think it was that interesting. He was passionate about cricket. He sang. Anyway, I decided, okay, maybe I want to use him as a vehicle to talk about the bigger global African issues. And so I write about him and I place him observing major international sporting events by and about Black people. So there are three major sporting events. One is the 1968 Dolivera Affair. So there was a South African so-called colored cricketer, colored as in mixed Indian white ancestry, in fact, no black at all. And he was a cricketing genius who, because he was colored, could not play in South Africa. And he came to England and ended up playing for England. And in 1968-69, it became possible that he might end up playing for England against South Africa in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
It was a huge, huge problem for the English, who were beholden in a way to the South African interests. And so he was not selected when he should have been. And that kicked off a whole big national campaign that actually started the international sporting boycott of South Africa. So I had my character watching this thing. And then months later, he's watching the 1968 Olympics where the African-American athletes, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, did the Black Power salute.
Yes.
And talks about the background to that. And then finally, the 1979 One-Day International, where the West is talking about his life and his friends. And there's what, now he wasn't particularly political, so I invited a character, a friend of his, who I call Laddie Williams, who talks the politics and the history. So I'll give you an example of Laddie Williams coming to his friend's flat to be fed again. And he says, Tunji Choande, my character, says, Marjorie, my flatmate and housekeeper, thought Laddie a pompous, verbose, tiresome know-it-all. To be honest, he could go on all night if you let him. This evening, he was talking about why the Biafran War had been inevitable. Nigeria is a ridiculous, senseless, unsustainable commercial construct of the British Empire. The two so-called protectorates, North and South, were acquired by force and Biafra's deceit, and merged together with no thought given to what the people in the North thought about those in the South, or what the people in the Southwest thought about those in the Southeast, not to cause with the Northwest and Northeast. They were just all lumped together, bam, and told to pledge allegiance to the king without complaint. Now, how is such an entity supposed to function properly after independence? How? When it should have been clear to anybody who had eyes to see that there was already distrust, ethnicity, infighting, regionalism, and rivalry throughout. But after decades of anti-colonialist struggle, the Brits were forced to say, okay, you want independence? All right, here you are. You are now independent Nigeria. Thank you. Goodbye. Oh, and by the way, just make sure that everything continues to flow through our companies and our banks to the coast for us. And that oil they're found in the Niger Delta, don't worry. BP and Shell, they will look after the messy stuff for you. Thank you very much. And then there were two coups in 1966, one by the Igbos, one by the Northerners. And people are selling us arms from all over the world. Of course, there'll be war. At this point, he shuts up because we're about to watch the 200 meters final. So that's again history wrapped up in art.
Beautifully said. It's your natural talents is so astonishing. Your range is astonishing. I don't mind saying it to your face. It is such a compliment to be your present, I have to say. And it is interesting. But of course, I wonder if today you could share some of your plan for future books, maybe plays or poems or songs that younger ones and others, can enjoy.
Definitely for the younger viewers, definitely for the younger children. I think they need that.
Yes. I am working at present on a screenplay, which at present, it's in the form of a 4-part TV series. I've never written for TV before, but I had never written for theater before. So I feel that with guidance, it will happen. And this story that I'm writing, which is called The African Saint of Liverpool, and it tells the true story of a Nigerian who came to Liverpool in 1915, maybe at the age of 15, we're not sure. And he sort of stole away on ship, thinking he was coming to a great, beautiful, rich country. And he ended up in the dingle in Liverpool and found it to be poor and ungodly and so on. And he saw a lot of horrible things. Anyway, 15 years later, in 1931, he opened up what became known as the African Church's Mission, which was both a church and a social services center feeding poor people, housing incoming sailors from the Commonwealth, when they couldn't find accommodation, and running this social service for 33 years without a penny coming from the Liverpool City Council or the government or even the Anti-Slavery Society, all of whom he appealed to for the entire length of that 33 years service. And they never gave a penny because they were suspicious of this black man who had the temerity not just to have a church, but to speak politics from the pulpit and talk about how the British are exploiting Africa and African people. And so it ran for 33 years, and eventually it was demolished in 1964 because the building just basically decayed and crumbled around him. But during that time, one of the things that he did, for example, was take in the mixed race children of Black American GIs who were born to local white women and were abandoned. So he and his colleagues who ran the home housed these so-called brown babies for a number of years. And instead of giving him support, the council eventually came and took the children away and took them to children's homes. And so this is a story that was told to me by a Hungarian woman that I met who came here to do some research. She wrote a book about it. Her name is Marika Sherwood. And she wrote this book, Pastor Daniels and the African Church's Mission. His name was Pastor Daniels Ekate, or it might have been Ekate. And so I've written this screenplay, which I think, I hope in a year or two will be on TV screens somewhere.
All right.
Yeah, so
we look forward. We look forward to this.
Space. Yeah.
Forward to this. Do you have? What about new books? Maybe in parallel, you do book as well.
Not books. Another play, which has been. I wrote a draft at the beginning of lockdown, and it's been on the shelf since then for 2 years. And that is what will be the third of a trilogy that I didn't realize I was starting when I wrote called Mr. Robson. A trilogy of one-man plays with singing. And this is inspired by the life and music of Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
Oh, right. Good for
who
you.
was the British composer,
Yes.
born in 1875, and he died in 1912. His father had been from Sierra Leone and returned to Sierra Leone after studying medicine, not even knowing that his girlfriend was pregnant with who became Samuel Coleridge Taylor. And Samuel Coleridge Taylor was one of the most popular composers of his time. And in fact, his mixed raceness didn't seem to impinge him at all. The music just transcended everything. And he was renowned internationally. And I've always wanted to tell his story somehow, but as he died in 1912, at the age of 37, he was mixed race, had a good afro hair, and was a brilliant violinist. I cannot play him. So I decided to tell the story through his nephew, who was the son of the son. So Samuel Coleridge Taylor's father returned to Sierra Leone in 1875. And several years later, maybe even 30 years later, he had another son called George Taylor. Mm-hmm. And George was probably 12 or 13 years younger than Samuel. And he realized years after Samuel had died that Samuel Coleridge Taylor was his half-brother. So he changed his name from George Taylor to George Coleridge Taylor. And his son, George Coleridge Taylor, also was a diplomat in Sierra Leone. And it is through him that I'm wanting to tell the story initially I thought I wanted to tell the story of Samuel Coleridge Taylor through his nephew, but I have decided that actually I want to tell the story of Sierra Leone and the history of Sierra Leone using Samuel's music, but explain the history of Sierra Leone and why the civil war in Sierra Leone that we had in the 1990s was almost inevitable through the eyes of this man who was a diplomat who really wanted to do a good job as a diplomat and sing his uncle's songs. So that's what is the basis of Coleridge Taylor of Freetown. Coming to a theatre near you one day, I don't know when.
Well, we'll be more than happy, if you so wish, to give further promotion that works when you're ready. Always.
Okay.
Our doors are always open to you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I've joined you on Instagram.
Okay, thank you. I shall follow this too.
So I know that's right. You've got Instagram and you're also on Facebook, I understand. You've got Facebook
Yes,
as well.
and I am Tayo, Aluko, and friends.
That's right. I believe you also have a website as well.
Tayo, Aluko, and friends.com.
Say it a little slowly just so they can write it down. Again,
Tayo, Aluko, and friends.com.
there you go. All righty. And those of you who are in receipt of our regular mailings, it is embedded in those regular mailings as well, the website. Okay. And then lastly, you've received numerous accolades for your work over the years. Okay. Which of those accolades stand out most for you? I've got a long list of them. In fact, I could spend a good 5-10 minutes reading them all out to the audience.
There's no need for that.
But which of them stand out to you? Which of them?
Those are awards from fringe festivals, Brighton Fringe, London Fringe in Canada, Stratford-on-Avon Fringe, and so on and so forth. But I won, best music, whatever. But I would say actually that the thing that I'm proudest of was when in Edinburgh in 2016, I think, I premiered Just an Ordinary Lawyer. And there was a young woman in the audience who wrote a note to me. So it's not a review that's been published or anything, but it's on my website. And she said in her note, I learned more about Black history from your play than I learned in my entire time at secondary school.
That's amazing.
I quote that everywhere. That's why I do what I do.
Absolutely. I have had this said to me previously, which is why it's above my head. That reason. You are a fascinating person to do the research. Truly fascinating, truly inspirational. And I'm very conscious that shows such as this should give light to you, so that as it's been repeated again and again, both here in the UK, Europe, and the world, that you are truly recognized for the magnificent work you have produced, and I know you will continue to produce, because you are still very young, if I may say so. Okay?
Take the compliment, Tayo. Take the compliment.
Thank you very much.
But I know that there is much more to come. We look forward to your TV screenplays as well. In the 21st century, that the TV is still a powerful media platform which still galvanizes the attentions of tens of millions. But clearly, this show, for example, is multi-platform, which include digital radio, Facebook, YouTube, Mixcloud, and of course, we're not yet going via website, but we will shortly go via website. So there's much that we will do to extend the show's reach. But what I'm clearly convinced that the talent we have in our community, we have talent in abundance, and you are an example of that abundance talent. I want to say to you, on behalf of the community, thank you.
Thank you.
Princess Empress Abner?
Yeah, I'm really. I feel like I've learned a lot, and there's people that I feel like I need to go research. I'm looking at your Instagram, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm going to take time out today and have a look at more about Paul Robinson and the things that you do. And I think you would be really inspirational in like secondary schools, talking to children about, you know, how you went from an architect to now a poet to an author. Because, you know, I think our kids are very limited and they don't see possibilities. And I think you could enable them to see the possibilities and understand their history. Because, you know, some of these kids, like, we don't want to go back to Africa. We don't want to learn about this. But I think you could kind of navigate and change that kind of outlook that the children have.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like I've learned something today, and I'm in my 30s. So,
well, that's great. That's great.
I'm going to say to you, Taya Aluko, thank you. We wish you well. Our doors are open to you at any time. You're most welcome. And we look forward to your future works. We will always give them publicity here. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Have a good day and a good strong. I wish you well. Thank you.
All the best to you and to the listeners. Thank you for the platform.
welcome.
Wow.
Take care. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Empress Abner, that was outstanding, wasn't it? Was that outstanding? It was. Truly an inspirational African, you know? And it is so true that our children and our children's children need to have record of such people so that such people are able to be examples of the very best, to inspire them into action. And the reason for these shows, of course, is that these shows are designed and intended to translate our words into action and to remind the audience that success is ours for the taking.
And not only that, it's to build knowledge. I think we so lack knowledge of what we are, who we are, and what we can be. And I think by doing these platforms, it will enable that and getting great people. But I do feel like the people we do have on the show, our young viewers can't get to know about these people because they're not on here. So if you've got children, you know, young people who feel a bit lost, this is a great platform for your children to come on and learn about, you know, great people in our community. I think, you know, without the young spreading the word as well, we are completely lost because they are our future.
Absolutely right. And again, to emphasize, we are, of course, on YouTube under The Motivator Show, that DE space
subscribe.
Indeed, yes, you should do the following, and don't forget. I do so enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I know you do.
So if you're viewing us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and to click the like button. If you're on Facebook, very similar exercise, press the like, just so that the algorithms will direct others towards the channel. And of course, if you can always share these programs on either YouTube or Facebook by press the share button and create a link, extend the link throughout your networks. Let's get our subscribers and our likes up to 10,000 by this time next year. That we will want to achieve. And please, with your help, we can achieve 10,000 subscribers. And of course, it was interesting in dialogue with Teo. He did say, as regards my own party, the Labour Party, which I'm a Labour councillor, that the party's issue in relation to unions. I think it's important to say this, though. The party, Labour Party, was founded by the union movement. Okay, we are very much a party of ordinary working people, all peoples, but most certainly ordinary working people, to uphold and seek equality of opportunity for all at all times. Okay, it is sometimes a struggle to this, of course, because we put this wider political context. But overall, Labour governments have always been good for Britain. I've got to assert, Labour governments have always been good for Britain. Okay, so it is interesting. It is interesting that there's some people up there who think that the party isn't pro-union. Of course it is. It was founded by unions, and unions have a vote whenever selecting party officials. They are a significant influence within the party. And later this month, you'll see the party conference, and unions will play a centre stage at the party conference. And one of my roles here in my borough of Southwark here in London, my portfolio, is to encourage union involvement, union membership by people who live here in Southwark in London. That's one of my roles. And absolutely, if we're to make changes, we must be organised. And it's only through organisation that you have the ability to really influence policymakers. Okay, I just need to say that just to keep some balance here. But
no, that's just you defending Labour Party. That's what you're trying to do. It's like when your homegirl does something wrong, and you're like, "Nah, but she's not usually like that. I'll stick up for her because you're seeing her in the wrong way." That's what you're doing.
I think it's important, nevertheless, to simply state the facts as they really are. That a Labour government are always good for Britain.
Yeah, but we are allowed, we are entitled to our opinions, and it is democracy.
But the reason why I've got you here is for that balance. Okay? And it's really good to debate politics and the future programme. And it'd be really useful to identify the benefits of a Labour government. It is without a shadow of a doubt the borough that I live in here in Southwark in London. It has most certainly benefited from a Labour council. Okay, our commitment to upholding the rights of all peoples in the borough is second to none. Okay, our commitment to housing is second to none. Our promotion of equal rights is second to none. I'm proud to be a member of the party. It's not perfect, no doubt. It is not perfect. But without a shadow of a doubt, we are better than the other lot. That's for sure.
I'm part of the Ghana Party, so anyone wants to join the Ghana Party, you can join that party. I'm part of the Ghana Party.
Now, we're almost at our 2-hour mark. I just want to ask you, my Empress. Okay, you've been with me now for a short period. Okay. What's your first impression? Tell me, what is your first impression of the guests and the topics, the dialogue that we've had so far?
I do enjoy the guests. I think it's an eye-opener for me, and it's me gaining knowledge, and knowledge is power. But I think if you want to target people younger than me, you're probably going to have to get people who are very, like a great person to get on would be Akala, because he's very, I love Akala. I've met him. I remember when I was working in Sainsbury's.
Let's get him.
People like Fight for Change, like, people like Jasper Lee, Jasper Lee, that came on last time. Young people like him and people who know the communities are great for young people to come on, because we need to get our young people woke, knowledgeable, and very aware of things that go on and about our community and about our history. Okay. So Akala
I know that Lee Jasper will be complimented by you saying he's young.
Yeah, he is young. You're young as you think. That man was young when I brought him on the show. So definitely, he's great. So some of our guests are really great. But again, we're missing out. If we want to get our wider communities, even get families listening together on these shows, we need to get people that appeal to everybody.
We will.
And even like black businessmen that work in the city, I don't know, that can relate to our people would be great. My sister is in IT. She works for the London Stock Exchange, and she's doing stuff for women in tech. And she's a black woman doing really well in her field, getting young women into IT. So that's really good. The women that she works with are from the ethnic Black and African Caribbean community, which is great, and they're getting awards constantly. And there's so many people I can think of that could come on this show and really inspire people. But Akala, if you're out there and you're listening, you would be great. And the guy that also is promoting housing, social housing as well, can't remember his name, and he would be great to talk about all the stuff that he's doing in the community with regards to Grenfell and things like that. So those kind of people are definitely people we need to get on the show.
Oh, see, that's why I've got you here. That's why
I'm pumped, guys. I'm ready to go. This is the gym. This is the gym feel.
There you go. The Motivator Show, where we translate our words into action.
So the motivator's got some work to do. He's got to get all these people on in the next coming weeks. He's got work to do.
We're going to work together, my empress. We're going to work together.
You forget I'm a mum of a young child, yeah?
Well, listeners, viewers, thank you. Thank you for your listening ear. Thank you for your support for the program. I want to give a big shout out for Erman Irish, a wonderful, dedicated viewer of our program. Got your messages, Erman. You just keep listening and keep spreading the word. Spreading the word. And my empress, give my regards to your lovely son. Go to the gym. Keep yourself as live and vigorous as ever. Because these shows, I know it affects people. That's the whole purpose, to affect people so that you are empowered. Yeah, you take care of yourself. You experience spiritual and intellectual enhancement. You are going to go forward. Remember, success is ours for the taking. I say to
you, have a nice day, viewers. Be good. Stay safe.
Good, strong. Good, strong. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Get the music flying. Here we go. Background music. Oh, here it comes. I'm going to say to you goodbye. Take care, my empress. Take care.
Pass the ducky on the left hand side.
Oh my God, that's one way of taking this out.
I'm just joking, guys. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.